You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mama friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Mama Work It podcast. Today on the show, we are chatting with Dr. Ritu Saluja-Sharma. Ritu is a physician, a mom, an integrative health coach, and the founder of Head, Heart, Hands, a comprehensive lifestyle change program. After 15 years of being on the front lines working in the ER, Ritu got a second board certification in lifestyle medicine to help people lose weight, prevent disease, optimize their physical and emotional health, and increase longevity. Because so many of our listeners are busy working moms who don't always prioritize physical and emotional health with our hectic schedules, I wanted to interview Ritu today to give us some practical advice on how we can easily make this happen. We're going to be talking about how to get better sleep, how to manage stress, and overall how to live a healthier, happier, and longer life so we can be there for our families and ourselves in the long run. Ritu, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your show and to reach all these hardworking mamas out there. So thank you.
Yeah, likewise. We're excited too. All right. Well, first things first, please tell us a little bit more about your story. You were already a very busy mom, I imagine, working as an ER doctor. And then you decided to get another certification and create Head, Heart, Hands. So what sparked this?
Yeah, so this is kind of a long story. I mean, I guess it's like, I feel like everything in my life has kind of led me to this point. So yeah, so I've been an ER doctor for 15 years, over 15 years. And, being an ER doctor, it's an amazing job. I get to see kids, I get to see adults, I get to see pretty much every medical condition. And in this past year, I've seen a lot of people with COVID-19, unfortunately. But, being on the front lines of our healthcare system, it's a unique vantage point, and I'm able to sort of see all of the flaws of our healthcare system too. So, one of the biggest issues with our healthcare system, in my opinion, is that it's really reactive. So, when somebody has diabetes, oh, here's some metformin. When someone has high blood pressure, oh, here's some pills. And we're not really reaching or going to the root of the problem. And disease prevention is really not the focus. The focus is more on expensive interventions or expensive pharmaceuticals or expensive supplements. And so I've always thought that I wanted to do something more holistic. I've always thought that I wanted to do something with prevention in addition to working in the ER. And so then when I stumbled on lifestyle medicine, it really resonated with me because the whole idea with it is that most of our chronic diseases, or many of our chronic diseases are rooted in our lifestyle and are potentially preventable. And so every shift all day long, I've seen people suffering with conditions that could likely have been prevented. So then when I started learning more about this, I'm like, this is really, this is the key to really helping people, helping heal people. And then going along with that, that's also a big driver of our healthcare spending. So I also feel like, by helping people prevent disease, that will also help relieve the burden off of our healthcare system and all the unsustainable spending in our healthcare system. So I really feel passionate that this is something that I wanted to do. But then what I wasn't really expecting is that along with learning all of this, it kind of sparked a personal transformation for me. So, for a few years there, I was really not feeling that great. I was working a lot. I was exhausted all the time. I mean, as an ER doctor, small kids, I was working at night, working in the evenings. And the first thing that that I let go was my sleep. I really felt like the last thing I wanted to do was waste my time sleeping. And so I really just like wasn't prioritizing that at all. And I wasn't sleeping enough. And then I would find myself being exhausted all the time. And then when I was exhausted, then I just was like more cranky. And then I would find myself emotional eating, and I'd be at work. And, in our break room, there'd be cookies and chips and all sorts of stuff. And I'd be like, you know, just living off of caffeine and sugar to kind of get me through, and really just like not feeling great, doing that and then not really exercising, just not feeling great. So then I started making these changes in my life when I started, learning more about lifestyle medicine. And I felt like it really helped me with my quality of life. So I started feeling, when I started sleeping better, then I started to have more energy, and I felt like I could control, the emotional eating, or I was more aware of when I was emotional eating. And I had more energy for, running and yoga and the things that I enjoy. And, I really like, I feel like it changed my life, and I feel like I still work in the ER, but I'm better able to manage the stress there. And so then I've just decided, like, wow, this is really not just about disease prevention. This is also about really changing people's quality of life. Then that's when I got certified as a health coach, and that's when I started Head Heart Hands.
Wow. Oh, I love that story. I love how personal it is to you too. And I can't wait to dive into these sleep strategies. But my first question is, you talk a lot about the connection between physical and emotional health. And I also believe this to be true. I've seen this in my own life. I've seen this in clients I work with in their lives, but I'm no certified physician. So, can you speak to this a bit more? Like, what's the scientific proof in this? Can you back it up for us a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, there is so much evidence. It is so clear that our physical health and our emotional health are connected. So, first we can just look at chronic diseases. So, people who have chronic diseases are more likely to be depressed. So, for example, people who have diabetes, or people who have uncontrolled blood sugars, people who have heart disease. So they have a higher risk of having depression as well. But then it actually works both ways. So depression is actually a risk factor for heart disease. People who have coronary artery disease are more likely to have a heart attack if they're depressed. So that, is just amazing. But then there's also, there's so much more. So we know that stress is related to so many conditions. And I think that we're even learning more and more about this. But, we know for certain that stress is related to heart disease. Stress is related to a lot of digestive issues. Stress is related to, it can be related to chronic pain. It can be related to fertility issues. It can be related to acid reflux. There's so many issues, medical issues that are related to stress. And I think the list is getting longer and longer of what we are aware of. And then not just that, it's also the lifestyle factors that we all think about as like, oh, these are the things that we need to do to help our bodies physically. But those same lifestyle factors are the same factors that help with our mental and emotional health. So, for example, the food we eat. So, we all know that we should be eating well. Eating healthy food is good for our bodies, but it's also really good for our emotional health. And there is a wealth of research actually, which supports this. So, for example, eating more processed food, eating fast food, both of those are correlated with an increased risk of depression. But then eating the Mediterranean diet, or eating more omega-3 fatty acids and monounsaturated fats. So those are the fats that are in like avocados and nuts. So those are associated with a decreased risk of depression. And so, all of the mechanisms of that are not completely understood, but we do know some. And, it's believed that fruits and vegetables and nutrient rich foods, those obviously help our body work properly physically. And, when our body is working better physically, then that then that translates to us feeling better. And then when we feel better, then we tend to be happier. Then also, some of the food we eat, so some of the fast food and the processed food, and some of the trans fats and saturated fats, those are actually, they promote inflammation. And so what's so interesting is that inflammation has become like a big field that we're just sort of learning more and more about. But the low grade inflammation that occurs in our body from the food we eat actually affects our brain, and it's called neuroinflammation. And that neuroinflammation can actually, it's actually related. It can have an effect and increase the risk for depression. So it's just amazing. And then physical activity, for instance. So when we are exercising, exercise actually has, in studies, they show that it may be as effective as antidepressants in treating depression. And I'm not recommending that people go out and go off their antidepressants, but I do think it's important to know how much it can actually make a difference. And the mechanism behind that is not entirely clear, but there are, because we don't 100% understand what depression, all of the mechanism behind it. But it's believed that when we exercise over the long term, our body releases something called brain derived neurotrophic proteins. And those proteins, those factors actually help us build nerves and build nerve connections in our brains. So not only is exercise helping, build strong muscles, essentially it's also helping us strengthen our brain, which is why we feel better emotionally when we exercise. And then sleep. Sleep also is so important for our immune system, for our bodies to function properly. But then it's also so related to our mental health. So when we are not sleeping properly, then that predisposes us to negative thinking and emotional vulnerability, and we're not able to manage or deal with our stress as well. And then also, mindfulness. So mindfulness-based stress reduction. So, I think a lot of people think about meditation and, these types of stress reductions techniques as, that they can be helpful for your stress and your emotional health. But then there's a lot of evidence that these same stress reduction techniques can actually make a big difference for our physical health. So, for example, mindfulness-based stress reductions have been linked to decreasing the risk for cardiovascular disease, decreasing blood pressure, decreasing pain, helping with addictions, helping with immunity. I mean, so there's so much crossover of how much our physical and emotional health are related, and then how it's related to our lifestyle.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, so many concrete examples there. And I want to mention too, I think a lot of times women our age, women with young kids, we don't think we are susceptible to some of these chronic diseases or these really serious things that can occur because we feel like we're young, we're fairly healthy. But I think we don't realize how much these decisions we're making, you know, this lack of sleep or this diet that we're following, lack of diet, I should say, maybe, could really harm us in the not so far off future, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I see people with lots of diseases and medical problems and people, who end up there. So I'm faced with it every day. So I just see that. And for most, for many people, maybe it won't, they won't have a disease or they won't, you know, end up in the ER for some reason. But these same lifestyle factors, the same self-care measures that help us prevent disease, for people like us, maybe the stronger motivator is actually just feeling better, improving your quality of life. And I think for me, that's knowing what I know about preventing disease, that's a big motivator for me too. But improving my quality of life maybe even be a bigger motivator at this point of why I continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to live their best life,
Hmm.
I think we often get caught up in the crazy vicious cycle of like the busyness, the perpetual busyness of the day to day, that we forget like, hey, this is it. Today is the day I'm living this life. I don't want to wait for, next year. I don't want to wait till the pandemic's over. I don't want to wait until my kids are in school or they're out of school or whatever you're waiting for. Like, let's start now because the days are passing us.
I agree. I agree.
All right. Well, let's talk about sleep because I know people listening are curious. So, how much do we really need? How can we improve our quality of sleep? Give us all your best sleep tips.
Yeah, so I have a lot that I can say about this. So adults should be sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night. And I think my number one recommendation is to prioritize your sleep because I don't think, I mean, if you're like me, for most of my adult life, I did not. And I think it's the easiest thing to sort of cut, when you're busy and you're trying to do stuff and trying to wake up early and work out or, go to bed late and you just don't get enough. So I think prioritizing is number one. But then, my whole program is about changing your lifestyle and promoting your physical and emotional health. So sleep is one of the pillars of my program. And so this is kind of what we do is we talk about different lifestyle measures. So I'll share some of those with you. I mean, I think I could go on and on about it, but I'll just share some of the most important ones. So the first is our phone. So I think all of us have the tendency, have the phone right by our bed. And it's the last thing we look at night before we go to sleep. And it's the first thing that we look at in the morning. And for many people, it's also like when they can't sleep, they look at it in the middle of the night and, checking their email and checking things. So, trying not to keep your phone in the bedroom, trying not to keep it, right next to you, trying not to look at it for the last hour, before you go to sleep. I think that could be really helpful. And then all of the same things. I mean, it's amazing how everything is connected. So what we eat. So, eating sugar before you go to sleep, or, that can actually really decrease your quality of sleep. So eating a lot of processed food, eating sugar, alcohol can also actually make sleep difficult for some people and decrease the quality of sleep. We should be watching our caffeine intake because that can have an effect. Then also our physical activity. So making sure that we're getting enough physical activity and, our bodies, our circadian rhythm is very much affected by light and especially natural light. So going out in the middle of the day and getting a walk or just being out in sunlight and getting some physical activity, I mean, that's a great way to improve your sleep. And then making sure you're hydrated, that's a big way to improve your sleep. And then mindfulness based stress reductions, that's also, so things like meditation. There's something called the mind body scan, which is a technique to relax your body and your mind. And the American Academy of Pediatrics actually recommends that as a way to help insomnia in children. And I think that that's beneficial for a lot of adults as well.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with these tips. And I practice not all the time, but I try very hard to practice the cell phone rule. And I actually give this as one of my tips too to my clients about getting more sleep. My advice is don't charge your phone on your night table, which I feel like many people will do that during the night. Put it in a place in a different part of your room, so that you actually have to get up and check your phone if you want to. And it's a lot less likely that you'll do it right once you're kind of in bed. Once you wake up, it's not the first thing you reach for. It's also good if you're somebody who in the past, I used to love to snooze in the morning, but now I no longer do that. I wake up when the alarm goes off. If your phone is plugged in a different part of your room, you actually physically have to get out of bed to turn your alarm off if your phone is acting like your alarm. So you can no longer snooze if that was your issue.
That's all good advice.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So lots of working moms listening to the show, I'm sure they're feeling stressed, exhausted, burnt out, similar to what your experience had been. And especially during the season we're still living in of, we're We're in 2021 as we record this. We're still in the pandemic, even though it's not at the height that we were, thankfully. What are some small changes that these women listening can make right now to improve this stress level? We've talked a lot about sleep already, so the exhaustion we've kind of covered a bit, but this feeling of feeling burnt out.
With everything that I said about how our lifestyle has an effect on our emotional health. I actually just gave a talk about this, about burnout, and 43% of people, of employees who say that they're burned out, they cite lack of self-care as the reason. And so, I mean, that is a huge factor. And so, I would say just getting rid of the guilt and getting rid of the shame, and just maybe doing just one thing, picking one thing, and realizing that what you're doing for yourself will not only help yourself physically, it'll help yourself emotionally, but it will also help those people around you. So if you feel like, oh man, I don't have time to go for a walk, how can I do that? Or, my kids are going to have 30 minutes more of screen time if I, do yoga, realize that actually this benefits them too. Because when you are taking care of yourself, you will feel happier. You'll be more capable of dealing with the stress of daily life. You'll probably be enjoy being a mom more. I mean, I know that that's how I feel, that when I'm exhausted and burned out, it's hard to really like enjoy the time with my kids as much as when I'm feeling rested and I feel like my tank is full. So and it'll also it will help at work. So I have an employee workplace wellness program that I'm branching into that field. And employers also want employees that feel good physically and mentally. So recognize that when you're taking time for yourself and you're doing something every day to help yourself feel better, that is actually a win-win-win. It's a win for everyone. So take out the shame, take out the guilt, and just celebrate it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. This is my philosophy too. It's like when you feel good, you do good. Your productivity is higher, your motivation's higher, you're a better mom, employee, spouse. You're so much better for everyone around you. And like the bonus of that is you're better for you too. So, yeah, love it. Love it. All right, we are going to hop on over to our lightning round
Okay.
now, where I get to ask you some totally just for fun random questions so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Sure, sure.
Okay, good. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
So this is not a short lightning answer. I'll give you like couple sentences, but I would say I was an introvert. My whole life, I would have said an introvert. But, recently I feel like I've been pushing myself out of my comfort zone and doing podcast interviews and public speaking. And I'm realizing that, these beliefs that we have about ourselves, they are based on our life experiences, but they're not fact. So, at this point, now I'm starting to question, I've always thought of myself as an introvert, but maybe in a couple years, I'll say I'm an extrovert.
Yeah, you're in the transition phase.
Yeah. I mean, I'm recognizing that, these beliefs that we have about ourselves are not necessarily true, and that, we can be whoever we want to be.
Yes, couldn't agree more. Okay. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? Calories don't count, although I know you're going to take wellness into consideration here.
So I'm going to say something that everyone's going to be like, what? But pizza. I love pizza. I love pizza. But I most of the time make it myself. Now in my program, we don't just like deprive ourselves and say like, oh, certain foods are bad and we can't eat them. So yeah, sometimes we'll order pizza, from out, but a lot of times I make it myself, and I make it with a whole wheat crust, and I put a bunch of roasted vegetables on it and just like a teeny bit of cheese, and it's like so yummy, and I pair it with a salad. So we eat that like once a week for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love pizza too. What's one app you cannot live without?
So I would say my Amazon Music is, I love music, and I feel like that's a way to like, we listen to music when we're doing dishes, when we're, driving to school, and it just infuses joy in life, just listening to music. So, and then there's actually another app that I want to mention that I would recommend for people who are trying to, improve their self-care and celebrate their wins. It's called My Weekly Wins, and it's a new app, and it's really a way to track your self-care, the way that you eat, your physical activity, and then to celebrate it. So I think that I've been looking at that more and more, and I think that that's a great app.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. It's good to like sit down for a minute and really do that, because I think we're always in such a rush, and we've always kind of thinking to the next thing, that we don't take that time and just enjoy that, even if it's just for a few minutes, right? To acknowledge those wins. That's really, really important.
It feels good to just like swipe and be like, oh, I worked out, oh, I did this, and to acknowledge it and celebrate it.
Yeah, love it. Well, speaking of music, what's your like get shit done song?
um, oh, this is like kind of embarrassing, but so No Tears Left to Cry by Ariana Grande. So like we turn that on in our house when we want to like pick up all the toys that are all over the floor. It's like picking it up. And I love that song, and I run to that song. So I would say that's one of our favorites.
Yeah, no shame in Ariana Grande. It's fine.
I hope I haven't ruined that song for people though. Now, like when I hear picking it up, I'm like, I just envision like me and my kids like cleaning up all of the toys all over the floor.
That's funny. All right. And finally, what book are you reading right now?
So I am reading a book. It's called Everything is Figure Outable.
By Marie
And
Forleo.
yes, it
Yeah,
is. I just started it.
it's a great read.
It's really good. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, a lot of my program is about mindset, and I've read a lot of books about mindset, and this is about mindset. Like everything is figure outable. I mean, that's really like the idea. But I feel like I can always still learn and get better at that. And so it's just a really like fresh, great way of looking at things. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, she's a great mentor. I like her a lot. Good. Well, before we wrap up, can you please tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So my website is headhearthandsmd.com. And I'm also on Facebook, Head Heart Hands MD. And then I'm actually hoping to start putting some videos on YouTube. So eventually, I do have a YouTube channel. Right now, there's like one video on there, but Head Heart Hands MD. And so I'd love for if anyone has any questions or wants to reach out or hear more about my individual program or the workplace wellness program, I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. I know our listeners appreciate all this great advice and information, and I know I learned a lot too. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much. This was really fun.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.